Few stories resonate as strongly as that of Jay Manuel and Pamela Chavez in the ever-expanding world of reality television, where personal dramas and family sagas take center stage on our screens. The pair, known only as Jay and Pamela, became well known in 2025 as cultural figures whose lives defied long-standing preconceptions about marriage, love, and handicap, in addition to being well known on television. Their tale is far from flawless. It is difficult, raw, and frequently painful. However, this honesty is exactly what has captured so much. Pay attention. Osteogenesis imperfecta type 3, a rare genetic disorder commonly referred to as brittle bone disease, affects both Jay and Pamela. This truth framed their everyday lives with risk and resilience from the beginning. Their connection might have been overshadowed by the difficulties they encounter, hospital stays, chronic pain, and constraints that others seldom ever think about. However, TLC showcased more than just their medical experience when it brought them to a national audience in March 2025. It was the tale of two individuals forging a life together in defiance of social, familial, and even physical norms. In addition to providing Jay with a platform to showcase his identity as a black trans man, the show brought attention to a side of his life that is rarely depicted on cable television. Due to her relationship, Pamela, a Mexican-American woman, became separated from her parents. The emotional toll of seeking love without family acceptance was made clear throughout the series. Their voices combined to shatter barriers of cultural silence, providing representation where none had previously been found. However, scrutiny accompanied visibility. Supporters hailed the historic representation, while some wonder if the network's portrayal relied too much on drama. Week by week, Jay and Pamela's narrative evolved, captivating viewers with a mixture of optimism and anguish as they dealt with medical scares, strained familial connections, and the happy milestone of marriage. And now that their first year in the spotlight is over, the issue still remains. What lessons does their journey teach us about love, resiliency, and the value of representation in 2025? Jay Manuel and Pamela Chavez were already living a story characterized by bravery and silent perseverance before the cameras ever rolled and before millions of people watched on TLC. Osteogenesis imperfecta type 3 was an uncommon ailment that both of them were born with, making them susceptible to fractures, chronic pain, and a continuous reminder that even everyday situations held great risk. These physical difficulties would have denoted a life lived in the background, unseen by a society that frequently favors heroes who are strong and straightforward. However, invisibility was never an option for Jay and Pamela. The two discovered a unique combination of strength and understanding in one another after meeting through overlapping communities of individuals with disabilities. Although their relationship developed into love, it was never straightforward. A bitter alienation that persisted throughout adulthood was caused by Pamela's parents' disapproval of her relationship with Jay. Jay's family also struggled with conflict, especially between Jay and his dad. Despite their broken family relationships, Jay and Pamela managed to forge a strong alliance. Television producers looking for a unique story finally became interested in this blend of love, adversity, and resiliency. When TLC debuted Jay and Pamela in March 2025, their entire world was altered. More than just another glimpse of domestic life was offered by the series. It provided viewers with a glimpse inside the lives of two individuals who refused to allow their destiny to be defined by their family or disability. With exclusive coverage of the debut, People magazine introduced readers to Jay and Pamela as people as well as the medical background of their condition. The show was grounded in real-world realities when Dr. Dana Oksky, a doctor who specializes in treating them, discussed the difficulties associated with brittle bone disease. Viewers knew this was no staged drama from the very first episode. The program mixed poignant moments, such as, with instances of intense conflict, like the obvious tension between Jay and his father, Pamela is adjusting regular routines to accommodate pain. Through culinary classes, hospital visits, and wedding planning, TLC's cameras captured an intimate and unvarnished portrayal of them. For Jay, the ascent was also characterized by cultural significance. It was revolutionary for a black trans man to be visible on mainstream cable television. Although transgender lifestyles have become more represented in recent years, not many stories have connected with handicap in such a prominent manner. In order to frame Jay and Pamela as more than reality TV, GLAAD emphasized this intersection. Conversations on identity could be reshaped by representation. Oy's Mexican-American roommate Pamela gave the story a new dimension. Her separation from her family served as a reminder of the price paid for choosing love when generational or cultural norms conflict. Their notoriety was not without criticism, though. Salon released a scathing analysis of reality TV's portrayal of people with disabilities in April, wondering whether the format ran the risk of taking advantage of a weakness to increase ratings. Throughout Jay and Pamela's ascent, this conflict between actual storytelling and reality TV spectacle would linger, but it was indisputable. Conversations sparked by their tale went much beyond TLC's scheduled programming. Jay and Pamela were more than simply the focus of their show by the time their wedding was featured in their April season finale. They had evolved into representations of activism, tenacity, and the potential for love to flourish, overcoming overwhelming odds. Their quick ascent to popularity was based on years of tenacity and personal hardship, characteristics that make them not only powerful but also vitally needed in 2025. Visibility brings scrutiny. Additionally, there was some criticism about Jay and Pamela's abrupt ascent to fame. Despite the fact that many viewers hailed their appearance on TLC as breakthrough representation, some wonder if the network's perspective was actually uplifting or if it fell into the long-standing tendency to take advantage of people who pay for ratings. Only a few weeks after the premiere, the first and most vocal criticism surfaced. In a blunt editorial published in April, Salon accused the show of encapsulating disability into easily assimilated entertainment. According to the essay, viewers were urged to view Jane Pamela more as a spectacle of struggle than as a whole human being. Tense family dynamics, fragile bodies, and heartbreaking medical scenes that are portrayed as cliffhangers. For those who support those with disabilities, this was nothing new. The worry that reality TV would simplify complicated lives into flat stories. Online discussions concerning whether Jay and Pamela strengthened or weakened representation were triggered by the article. Camela's traumatic separation from her parents was at the center of these discussions. The show showed how her parents severed their relationship after she married Jay, a black trans man who had brittle bone condition. The audience was split. Pamela's story was perceived by some as an criticism of archaic biases, while others were concerned that the presentation focused too much on her family's rejection, transforming personal sorrow into public theater. In interviews, Pamela acknowledged the anguish of the breakup and talked about how determined she was to start her own life. Jay's family's difficulties added fuel to the fire. There was obvious tension in his relationship with his father, as evidenced by the awkward attempts at reconciliation captured on TLC cameras, including the second episode featured a cookery lesson. Some observers saw these scenes as signs of progress and hope. Others found them unsettling, which prompted them to wonder if family dynamics were twisted rather than improved by the cameras and how much private suffering should be broadcast on television. The expected health crises added to the spotlight. The show capitalized on the tension when Jay was admitted to the hospital in the middle of the season, teasing viewers as to whether he would be well enough to attend the wedding. Critics saw this as a concerning instance of medical vulnerability that was used as storyline. Supporters retorted that ignoring this would whitewash their story because it was the reality of living with OI. The controversies did not lessen interest in spite of the criticism. They heightened it, if anything. Every argument concerning theatrics versus realism, exploitation versus empowerment, placed Jay and Pamela at the forefront of public discourse. And it was just this combination of unfiltered intimacy and contentious debate that made the series a hit on TLC. By the end, Jay and Pamela were more than simply newlyweds getting used to married life at the start of their first season. They served as focal points for a broader cultural discussion. Their narrative forces viewers to consider how identity, love, and disability are portrayed on television. Jay. One of the most compelling storylines in TLC's programming is Manuel's journey through 2025. In addition to the difficulties he encounters, his story raises awareness of identity intersections that are rarely portrayed on cable television. Regarding Jay, the J and marriage is not all that Pamela is about. It is about living a life that is both fragile and strong as a black trans man with osteogenesis imperfecta type 3. Viewers were first exposed to Jay's everyday life when the series debuted in March. Every movement was risky, and Oi left him open to fractures. Even simple tasks like walking, lifting, and standing required caution. Dr. Dana Oldisi's remark during the premiere created this background and anchored Jay's story in medical truth while highlighting the emotional cost. His life stakes weren't intangible. In each scene, they were embodied. Instead, Jay approached the camera with fun and honesty, allowing viewers to enter his world as he saw fit. However, the season put that fortitude to the test almost immediately. The storyline was rocked by Jay's hospitalization in episode 3, Love and Limitations. For people with OI, hospitalization is a constant threat, but for television viewers, it marked a significant turning point. Would Jay recuperate in time to carry on with the wedding planning? The suspense was pushed by TLC. For Jay, however, this was not a plot. He lived it. Later episodes showed Pamela's weariness and anxiousness from waiting beside his hospital bed. Overhanging them both was the question of whether the wedding could actually go on. There was more to these health scares than just drama. They influenced Jay's journey's central emotional theme. They reminded audiences that perseverance, not invincibility, is what resilience is all about. There was a noticeable sense of relief for Pamela and the audience who had been captivated by their shaky but resolute love story when episode 4 confirmed that Jay was no longer in the hospital. Complicated familial relationships also weighed heavily on Jay's personal life. Distance and unsaid disappointments characterized his strained connection with his father. In episode 2, TLC highlighted their attempts at reconciliation during a cooking class, documenting the uncomfortable silences and hesitant movements. Some people found it unpleasant to witness these situations. They represented a crucial confrontation with the past for Jay. Strained, but the connection persisted. His willingness to heal divisions was demonstrated by the endeavor itself. Jay's responsibilities as an advocate and partner became more apparent as the wedding drew near. It was groundbreaking for many people to watch Jay publicly identify as a black trans man while getting ready for marriage because representation mattered. GLAAD emphasized the importance by portraying him as a cultural first on popular reality television. In his Jay converted personal accomplishments into public advocacy by being open to discussing identity and visibility. His journey was solidified by the wedding event, which was televised in the season finale on April 22nd. The broadcast ceremony became a symbolic event, even though Pamela later confirmed on Instagram that their legal marriage occurred in 2024. Viewers watched as Jay entered a new chapter that was characterized by love rather than constraints, with his wheelchair at his side and vows in his voice. Marriage was more than just a significant event in his life. It was an announcement that he was deserving of happiness, collaboration, and attention. However, difficulties persisted even after the vows. Episodes that aired in May featured Jay training with a personal trainer. When Pamela revealed her fears and questioned the limits of trust in their young marriage, what initially appeared to be a step toward empowerment swiftly devolved into conflict. Jay handled the conflict with candor by acknowledging that their relationship needed ongoing communication and modification. It served as a reminder that, despite the conclusion of the fairy tale, actual marriage was human, messy, and complex. Jay and Pamela were featured on a podcast in July, discussing their first year of marriage. The weight of Jay's personal experience was evident in his statements. Public scrutiny, family conflicts, and hospital visits persisted, but so did their unwavering feeling of pride in what they had created together. Being perfect was never the goal of the trip for him. Being noticed was the goal. Jay's 2025 narrative is one of representation being broadened, resilience being redefined, and vulnerability being made public. From the hospital corridors to wedding vows, his story remains relevant as a societal triumph for visibility as well as a very personal struggle for love. Pamela Chavez's journey in 2025 is characterized by emotional fortitude, cultural identity, and the agonizing price of following her love, if Jay's journey is characterized by fortitude in the face of medical fragility. Pamela struggled against a world of expectations, while Jay battled his body. From her parents' disapproval to the strain of taking care of others while establishing her own autonomy. Viewers soon realized that Pamela's narrative was just as complex and captivating as Jay's when Jay and Pamela debuted in March 2025. She has osteogenesis imperfect type 3, much like her husband. Her everyday existence was influenced by the discomfort and physical limitations of brittle bone disease. Her emotional burden, however, was what really captivated the audience. On camera, Pamela disclosed that her connection with Jay had permanently damaged her relationship with her parents. She became estranged as a result of their criticism, cut off from her own family as a daughter. Every sight was tinged with sadness, and milestones meant to be shared were shadowed by an absence. Pamela participated in efforts to heal divisions among Jay's family in episode 2, assisting in reducing hostilities between him and his father over a straightforward cooking class. However, her own family was not there while she was playing peacemaker there. It was a startling contrast. Pamela softly carries while tending to the hurts of another family. Her personal, unresolved alienation. Her sensitivity made her immediately sympathetic to a large number of viewers. The person who loves passionately even when it costs everything, and who grins despite sorrow. When Jay's illness in episode 3 brought Pamela's role as caregiver into the forefront, it put her strength to the test even more. Pamela had to juggle wedding preparations with the terrible doubt that her boyfriend would even be well enough to stand by her side while Jay was in the hospital. Her voice cracked under the strain as the cameras captured her fatigue. But she continued. Although Jay's release was verified in episode 4, Pamela's mental and emotional health suffered during the weeks before their wedding. It served as a reminder that people with chronic illnesses experience life changes that affect not just the patient but also those close to them. And then there was the wedding itself. Pamela's anxiety over her parents' attendance was stoked by TLC advertising, but it was evident from the conclusion that they never arrived. The absence of her relatives was as noticeable as the music that accompanied her down the aisle on April 22nd, when Jay and Pamela exchanged vows in front of TLC's cameras. The show still had the weight of public significance, even though she later emphasized on Instagram that she and Jay had been legally married in 2024, months before the publicized ceremony. For Pamela, going down that aisle without her parents was as much a statement of her freedom as it was of her love. She was making the decision to leave her family behind in favor of her own. I do not mark the end of the story. Another level of tension was shown in May's new episodes. Jay's choice to collaborate with a personal fitness instructor. What may have been a move in the right direction for his health soon made Pamela uneasy. She said that she felt insecure and that the addition of new members to Jay's circle sparked worries about trust and loyalty. Their awkward and unfiltered on-camera exchange served as a reminder that marriage is a continuous negotiation rather than a conclusion. It was a test of vulnerability for Pamela. Would she be able to express her worries and remain confident that she was Jay's equal partner? Slowly, signs of recovery appeared. Later footage showed Pamela developing a bond with Jay's father, which had previously seemed unattainable. Even though she still had no relationship with her own parents, it was a modest but significant step toward being a part of Jay's family. In July, during their collaborative, Pamela talked candidly and calmly about her first year of marriage during an interview on the podcast Tea Time with Raven and Miranda. She expressed her hope for the future, her recognition of sorrow, and her pride in the life she and Jay were creating. Pamela's adventure in 2025 is not a story with a happy ending. It's about a lady who redefines strength. Pamela has demonstrated to audiences that resilience is not about never breaking, even living with Oi and being separated from her parents. but about making the decision to press on despite brokenness. Viewers witnessed not only the hardships of disabilities, but also the universal want for love, family, and acceptance in her story. One thing was evident by the middle of 2025. There was more to Jay and Pamela's story than just them. The families in their immediate vicinity were also a factor. The uncommon links that hesitantly started to rebuild, the bridges that wavered, and the ties that broke. The conflict with his father continued to be one of Jay's most obvious issues. Of the series, episodes emphasized their uncomfortable interactions and hesitant attempts at reconciliation, with Pamela frequently acting as a mediator. There were glimmers of hope, but a single season could not erase decades of despair and estrangement. Even with the burden of ancient scars, there was still hope for healing, as seen by shared meals and fleeting moments of connection. These brief moments were significant because they served as a reminder to viewers that even broken families can occasionally move toward reconciliation. The narrative of Pamela's family carried a heavier shadow, though. In April's conclusion, she stood in front of the cameras with the empty spot where her family should have been, having chosen to marry Jay and become estranged from them. It was symbolic as well as personal for them to miss her wedding. It emphasized the emotional cost of going against custom and cultural norms. Despite their admiration for her resolve to start a new family on her own, viewers shared her grief. However, family was not the only cause of strife. By summertime, in a little but significant indication of development, Pamela was observed growing closer to Jay's father. A change in emphasis was signaled by the couple's combined appearance on the Tea Time with Raven and Miranda podcast. Jay and Pamela put up a united front, deciding to define their marriage by the life they were actively creating rather than by who was absent. In 2025, there are still unresolved family dynamics around Jay and Pamela, characterized by both tiny reconciliations and arrangement. However, their reluctance to allow those. Their lives are determined by dynamics. Jay and Pamela demonstrate that family is not just inherited but can also be chosen, fostered, and redefined, whether they are seated across from doubtful parents or side by side behind a podcast microphone. One thing became clear as Jay and Pamela's first season ended in the summer of 2025. The impact of their story was greater than the screen on which it was aired. In a world of reality TV that has historically been dominated by programs about scandal-driven or picture-perfect families, sagas, Jay. Something distinct was provided by Manuel and Pamela Chavez, who painted a picture of fortitude, identity, and love that was unapologetic and lived in the open. Representation is the first step toward their legacy. Jay is the first transgender person of color to be the focus of a TLC reality show. A historic occasion made more prominent by his infirmity. The story was further developed by Pamela, a Mexican-American woman who also has osteogenesis imperfecta. Collectively, they represented a unique convergence of experiences, including queer, disabled. Historically, multiracial and disabled people were not visible on popular television. Their attendance was much than just entertainment for advocacy organizations like GLAAD. It was proof that the nuanced reality of marginalized lives might be reflected on television. However, a legacy is not created by representation alone. The unvarnished nature of their tale, their separation from Pamela's parents, their heated conversations with Jay's father, and the ongoing threat of medical crises made viewers consider issues of acceptance within the family and resilience. TLC was criticized for relying too much on drama and taking advantage of viewers' weaknesses in order to increase viewership. This conflict was encapsulated in Salon's initial review, which cautioned that disability runs the risk of being reduced to spectacle. Nevertheless, the discussion was important even in the face of criticism. It indicated that viewers were focusing and considering how to strike a balance between exploitation and empowerment. These arguments became ingrained in Jay and Pamela's culture. They leaned into sincerity rather than avoiding examination. Their July. The change was emphasized by the podcast appearance. Outside of TLC's editing room, they talked about their first year of marriage in their own words, expressing delight in the family they were creating but also noting the difficulties. By doing this, they took back control of their narrative and demonstrated that their legacy will be defined by their voices rather than just the cameras. Beyond reality TV, Jane and Pamela have a bright future ahead of them. Their prominence makes them potential disability activists. Rights, societal acceptance, and representation of LGBTQ+ people. It would be easy for advocacy groups, conferences, and universities to view them as voices that should be heard. Pamela has already clarified timings and personal facts on social media, demonstrating their willingness to take charge of the story when needed. Jay and Pamela have the ability to extend their impact into other arenas, such as advocacy, podcasts, and public speaking, regardless of whether TLC decides to continue the show. However, their tale also illustrates a more general change inside TLC itself. The network, which was previously accused for endorsing regressive family structures, is currently experimenting with inclusive series. This development is demonstrated by Jay and Pamela's show, which positions TLC as a platform for a variety of realities in addition to being a source of drama. Going forward, the question is whether this is a short-term experiment or a long-term shift in the way that marginalized lives are depicted on television. For viewers, Jay and Pamela's legacy is found in the lessons they taught about love. Under duress. After navigating precarious health, broken families, and public scrutiny, viewers saw two people emerge with promises made and futures envisioned. It wasn't a good story. It was clumsy, flawed, and intensely human. And its force was in that honesty. The narrative of Jay and Pamela is far from over in terms of the future. Their difficulties still exist, but so does their prominence. Their influence can be felt whether they are promoting acceptance, working for improved representation, or just being honest as husband and wife. Will keep having an impact until 2025 and beyond. Ultimately, their value might lie in the discussions they prompted rather than just what TLC documented. Discussions that are already starting to change how we view love, disability, and resiliency in contemporary America. Fundamentally, the tale of Jay, Pamela, and Manuel Chavez are not flawless. It requires perseverance. Their lifestyles provided something distinct in a world where spectacle is frequently the lifeblood of reality television. An honest depiction of enduring love in the face of criticism, rejection, and disease. The fissures that accompany fragile bones and brittle familial bonds have been demonstrated to us by their trip to 2025. However, it has also demonstrated the unwavering power of two individuals sticking by each other through thick and thin, no matter what. In order to stand as a black trans man and live openly and proudly, Jay had to turn his vulnerability into visibility. Pamela had to bear the pain of separation while continuing to move forward. With grace and bravery. Collectively, they have changed the discourse about what it means to belong, be loved, and be noticed. The discussions they have provoked about family, identity, disability, and perseverance may be more significant than the number of TLC episodes they have produced. And their story will continue to be told in those discussions. We now ask you the question: how do you interpret Jay and Pamela's journey? Does their struggle for love motivate you, or does it make you reevaluate your beliefs? Regarding representation, leave a comment below with your opinions. Remember to press the bell, like, and subscribe for more stories like this one. This is The Fame, where we reveal the backstories behind the headlines. Till the next time.